while an appeal has been heard, will ensure that those who have been sanctioned incorrectly do not suffer a financial penalty, but in such cases where someone who has been sanctioned under the rules in a correct manner, they will still receive the same length of sanction, and the principle of sanction, which I am opposed to the current proposals, but as they stand, they would still be applied. Amendment 4 would require companies in the private sector to whom work was outsourced to be human rights compliant. Again, I think it is important whereby a private company is carrying out the duties that would otherwise be carried out by a public body, and they're essentially pertaining to the role of a public agency, that they should be expected to adhere to the same standards as public agencies, and I support Amendment 4 for that reason. Amendment 27 mirrors an amendment I brought forward at the last stage, which was petition to concern at this stage, so far isn't this time around, and it would ensure that workers are treated equally, regardless of whether or not they are from the UK citizens or EU workers, and they would be treated on an equal basis. I think this is right in the sense of fairness and equality, but it's also right for this Assembly to pass to ensure that we don't implement a law which could be contrary to EU regulations and could see us face significant EU infractions should we implement.
Thank the member for giving way on that particular point, and I appreciate that it is an important point with regards to other EU nationals. But would he accept that the reality is that in the 3 years since the legislation has changed the rest of the United Kingdom, neither has there been a case, nor indeed is there any research that indicates that there has been an issue with this problem, and therefore it is unnecessary to make the amendment?
I thank the member for his intervention. I don't know if he's saying he supports then the provisions that are currently in the bill. I expressed my disappointment that Anna Lowe had taken her name off my amendment. She had taken her name off her own amendment, which she had brought forward at the last stage, leaving me as a co-signatory to speak to it. So I don't know if the member Anna Lowe or the Alliance Party have changed their position in this issue, but as I stated, it's one of fairness, and I stated that there may be legal consequences. Of course, I don't want to see Northern Ireland subject to infractions, but I think the best way to do that is to treat workers, two workers working in the same job, doing the same job, made unemployed for the same reason, to treat them equally, to treat them fairly, and not to discriminate on the basis of nationality. Moving to the Minister's amendments, briefly, Amendments 13 and 14 provide that regulations can stipulate what other evidence, along with medical evidence, can be taken into account. I look forward to hearing the Minister's intention with this amendment. I certainly would have no objections to this at this stage. Amendment 18 would provide a report on standards of advice and assistance, and again I wait to hear the Minister's explanation for that. Amendment 20 would add universal credit in terms of being covered by the rates relief scheme, and my understanding of this is that it would recognise the migration of housing benefit into universal credit, and I assume it is ensuring that the same standard of rate relief applies in those circumstances. Amendment 22 is obviously key, and this is the power for implementing the discretionary payments and the details of how that will operate. And I welcome that. I want to be clear. I think the the budget that has been set aside to mitigate against welfare reform is to be welcome. Where I do have a problem is when people say that no one will be worse off when welfare reform is implemented in Northern Ireland, because the figures do not stack up. The NICVA report estimated that welfare reform, welfare cuts in Northern Ireland would see 250 million lost to people on benefits in Northern Ireland if implemented as in GB. The then Minister Nelson McCausland, in answer to me, stated that figure was more in the region of 115 million. But we're now being told that 90 million a year, thereabouts, the 565 million over 6 years, is sufficient to ensure that no one's worse off. My calculations can't equate those figures. To me, that will still leave. That will still mean the implementation of welfare cuts in Northern Ireland. Mitigated, yes, by the 565 million, but certainly not negated by it. So we're yet to see the detail of who will be worse off in Northern Ireland, and that's where my concerns lie. Amendment 23 I've addressed in terms of the Department duty to ensure free advice, but not independent free advice. And Amendment 26 relates to royal assent for amendments should they be passed by this Assembly today. Mr. Speaker, I conclude on this group of amendments. I look forward to hearing the debate on each of the amendments, and I hope it can be, I suppose, a more open debate than in the consideration stage, which was closed from the outset by the many petitions of concern. Thank you.